After the battle against Mahito, a flame spawned in both Yuji and Mahito. With Mahito, he felt embarrassed due to his loss to Yuji and how much Yuji was able to pressure him in their fight. However, with Yuji, he felt an immense desire to avenge Junpei and, more importantly, to kill Mahito. And while this sense of rage was going to seem to fade, in reality it was going to remain there and only strengthen with time. Yuji was just good at hiding it. However, his brother was able to catch on as Yuji re-entered into the dreamscape and the two of them talked for a bit, with Choso actually being able to help coach Yuji through this quite well. Now, he couldn't really help with Yuji's rage, but there was something he could definitely help with, which was teaching Yuji how to convert that rage into raw amounts of curse energy. Now, of course, there was still the issue of his curse energy lagging behind him, especially when he was using Flowing Red Scale and Flowing Red Scale Stack. Mainly because of how fast Yuji's body actually moved, his curse energy could barely keep up. However, Choso didn't really see that as a bad thing if he was being honest, mainly because it was a unique quirk for Yuji that most people wouldn't expect. After all, how many people really expect a lagged curse energy, especially from a sorcerer like Yuji, who has access to this many blood manipulation techniques? And while Yuji certainly agreed with that, he believed now that he had to work on his fundamentals. After all, his physical strength as well as his blood manipulation was really good, especially his usage of Flowing Red Scale Stack. While he couldn't pick up on how to use Piercing Blood yet, he was getting better and better. However, he felt that his curse energy control was lacking a bit in comparison. Now, it wasn't that bad in comparison to other sorcerers, and he was actually better than where he was in his cannon placement, but he wasn't as good as he wished he could have been. This leads into the Goodwill Festival eventually happening, where the other students are all introduced to each other, and there's actually something a little bit different in comparison to normal, because one of the students from Kyoto High ends up approaching Yuji. And that student was named Kamo Noritoshi, which actually led Yuji to immediately being on guard around Kamo. The main reason for that was because of all the things that Choso had told him about his Kamo. However, he just figured that two of them had similar names, mainly because Kamo was not that old. Though if he was being honest, he did feel a little bit bad for Kamo, mainly because of that name. Like, could you imagine being named after the most evil sorcerer in history? Granted, he had no idea how many people actually knew who Kamo was, so it could all just be really lucky coincidence, but still. The reason why Kamo was properly introducing himself was because he found Yuji to be an interesting person. Not just was Yuji the vessel of Sukuna, but they were also a member of the Kamo clan that he had no idea about, but from what he could tell, they were really strong. Now, in terms of blood manipulation skill, he was actually worse than Kamo. However, in terms of physical power, Kamo was actually much weaker than Yuji. As a part of Kamo had to wonder what would Yuji be like at his full potential of skill, and how terrifying of a monster could Yuji end up becoming. There was also the fact he was friends with a member of the Zenin clan as well, which made it all the more interesting, and he wondered who could have been behind this and how could he have not known about a member of the Kamo clan for this long. This ended up spawning a conflict in Kamo. Kamo originally was of the opinion that they needed to kill Yuji, however right now he actually wasn't too sure, mainly because of the fact that Yuji did have blood manipulation and could be related to him. He wasn't too sure if he wanted to kill them or keep Yuji around as an ally for what he had planned. At the same time, orders were orders, however there was also another part of Kamo that had to question if he was even capable of killing Yuji as well. This then leads into Yuji battling against Todo, as well as him battling against Kyoto High, which goes mostly the same. While Yuji was really tempted to use blood manipulation and Flowing Red Scale, after all he was pretty confident with Flowing Red Scale he could actually match Todo in terms of physical combat, he really wanted to work on his base. He wanted to make his base as strong as Todo, seeing Todo as the core example. Sure, physically he was stronger than Todo, but in terms of curse energy control, Todo was significantly better than him. And when all of Kyoto High chose to jump Yuji, that was when Yuji actually decided to use Flowing Red Scale and Flowing Red Scale Stack, being able to easily deal with them. Of course, he didn't actually end up beating them, mainly because it was a really short encounter, but he was able to beat all of them until Todo ended up showing up and telling all of them to leave, as he and Todo began their sparring session. During this little spar of theirs, Todo made comments on how he had heard about Yuji's blood manipulation and blood manipulation abilities, and how reliant he had been on them because they were that good. However, he told him that just relying on that technique won't be enough to beat special grades, not like Mahito and not like others that exist as well. Sure, he might be enough now to beat the Finger Bearer, but he's not enough to beat what Mahito will become. After all, he was allowed to live. And with that statement, as well as Todo explaining the core of curse energy to Yuji, Yuji was able to properly flow his curse energy. As both Todo and Yuji decided from here on out they were going to go all out, as Yuji activated Flowing Red Scale and the two of them began their spar. When the two of them were sparring, Yuji realized he had massively underestimated how strong Todo actually was. However, with this new control of curse energy, Yuji in Flowing Red Scale was actually on par with Todo, if not a slight bit better than him. If Yuji were to activate Flowing Red Scale Stack, he would actually be much stronger than Todo, but he didn't want to use that technique, mainly because he felt he could only use it in bursts, and he was trying to figure out new ways to use it, both to make it his own as well as to make it stronger and better. However, the two's battle is interrupted as they hear Hanami in the distance battling against the other students, and Yuji and Todo both arrive in order to back them up. However, Yuji immediately activated Flowing Red Scale Stack just to make sure he could get there faster, mainly because he could sense Megumi in danger. However, Todo was still able to arrive with Yuji swapping in place of Megumi's sword. Unknown to Yuji, he had actually used his curse technique to get there. And with that, Todo was able to move Maki away from Hanami's attack, while at the same time, Yuji landed a hard punch on Hanami's gut. And this punch did a noticeable amount of damage to Hanami. After all, from everything they had taken so far, this was by far the most hard-hitting attack. Keep in mind, Yuji in Flowing Red Scale is already on par with Todo, who Todo is strong enough to hit Hanami and hurt Hanami. Now you have Flowing Red Scale Stack Yuji, who's even stronger than that. However, that was when Todo chose to take a step back, and he told Yuji that he wasn't going to help Yuji until Yuji could land a Black Flash. And upon hearing the description of the Black Flash, it actually gave Yuji an idea on how to advance the Flowing Red Scale and Flowing Red Scale Stack. Which the theory was quite simple for Yuji. If by applying his curse energy within a millionth of a second would offer him a much greater level of control of his curse energy, as well as make that hit much stronger, wouldn't it be possible to do the same with blood manipulation, since blood manipulation is also ultimately based on curse energy? As Yuji was now forcing his heart to work overtime at the same time that he was going to land that curse energy. He was going to try and combo with both. And while he was able to increase the flow of Flowing Red Scale Stack and increase the speed that it activated, it did do a bit more damage, but it wasn't the Black Flash that Todo was looking for, as Todo clapped and Yuji appeared beside him before Todo slapped Yuji and explained to him that he needs to calm down and that his anger is not helping him. As Yuji then suddenly gained a very heavy look of focus on him, and they could also hear what sounded like a heartbeat. Hanami realized in that moment they can't let Yuji get close to them, as they launched out a large amount of branches towards Yuji, trying to prevent them from reaching him, as Yuji began to break through each of those branches while activating Flowing Red Scale Stack. He was moving insanely fast, way too fast for Hanami. As the sound of that heartbeat got louder and louder as Yuji appeared right in front of Hanami and punched Hanami, landing a Black Flash while also activating Flowing Red Scale Stack at the same time he landed the Black Flash. Wait, no, this wasn't Flowing Red Scale Stack. This was something beyond it. Something much, much stronger. And with that strike, not just was Hanami's arm completely destroyed, but also a large part of Hanami's chest was destroyed as well. This move we're going to call Flowing Red Scale Burst. And I don't think I need to tell you guys that this battle goes really poorly for Hanami, considering the fact that Yuji and Todo were already doing really well against Hanami in canon, and now we have a severely stronger Yuji, as well as Todo who's going to be there, and yeah, Hanami gets absolutely destroyed. However, something else interesting does happen too, which is the fact that Todo is most certainly going to land a Black Flash himself in this battle as well, mainly because of the fact that Todo doesn't want to feel left behind by his brother, similar to what happened when Yuji and Todo were fighting against Mahito back in Shibuya. But even with that, Yuji's the one to put down Hanami. After Yuji lands those 4 Black Flashes, that is enough to kill them. This also leads to Gojo being very heavily impressed with Yuji's growth as well. After all, he had been able to take out a special grade curse that was most certainly stronger than the Finger Bearer. Compare this to the Yuji at the start of all of this, who was being throttled around and toyed with by a Finger Bearer. However, we aren't quite at the end of the Goodwill Festival yet, mainly because Yuji is approached by somebody else. He is approached by Kamo Noritoshi. As Kamo asks if it could be possible that him and Yuji could train together, mainly because he feels that there are things that both of them could learn from each other. While Yuji was skilled in blood manipulation, a lot of it came from people who weren't really the best teachers in comparison to Kamo, who naturally was really good as a teacher, while Kamo himself was lacking in a lot of power and he wanted to get stronger. The both of them could help refine each other. Kamo could help Yuji work on his technique as well as his skill, while Yuji could help Kamo work on his power and his strength, which Yuji was more than okay with agreeing to, especially because he still felt that anger and hate towards Mahito. So this was a pretty good day, as all of their siblings celebrated Yuji being able to take out a special grade curse like Hanami, as well as celebrated their success. Of course, they were still ultimately cautious about Kamo Noritoshi, but from what they could tell from what Yuji said, they definitely weren't the same, and they weren't as cautious in comparison, since this guy just seemed like they were unlucky to have the same name. In truth, Choso also felt bad for him. About a week had passed since the Goodwill Festival had ended. He was planning to start his training with Kamo Noritoshi next week. However, he wanted to go to sleep, see what his brothers were up to, and see what he could talk with them about. He wanted to catch up with them a little. But this time around, when he went to sleep, only 6 of his brothers were currently present. Choso, Eso, and Kechizu were not there. As Naranzo, the 4th sibling, explained to Yuji what had happened, which was Eso, Kechizu, and Choso had all been incarnated into vessels. They had also explained what the real purpose of the Goodwill Festival was, which Yuji had already known about by this point, but it was confirmed now, which the purpose was to get the 10 fingers of Sukuna Jujutsu High had present. Of course, he did know that the siblings were there, but he was never really told about their status or the fact that they were there to begin with, but now it was confirmed for him. However, before Naranzo could say something else, he also disappeared from the dreamscape, and then another of their siblings, and another, until all of them had disappeared. All 9 of the death paintings had been incarnated. Kenjaku felt a little bit more of a need than normal to actually get some more allies, mainly because of the fact that Hanami was dead, and the fact that Shibuya was 2 months away. He wanted to get some strong allies just in case. And Kenjaku was actually unaware of the fact that Yuji and the other siblings had a dreamscape that they connect within. He just thought up to this point that Yuji had been able to develop naturally and develop like this, maybe with the help of Gojo, but he thought that that was likely. He had no real way to know that the siblings could connect with each other. Which that was something that they all agreed to keep secret for now. Of course, if they wanted to reconnect with the dreamscape with Yuji, it would just take them all falling asleep, but this would be significantly harder now, mainly because of the fact that they would have to time out their sleeps with Yuji and try and predict when he was going to go to sleep. Though Choso was pretty confident they could do this. After all, Choso knew his bedtime schedule by this point. He knows his little brother well. However, in the next arc, we have 2 little differences that are going to happen. Number 1, Kenjaku is going to send out cursed spirits instead of the siblings, mainly because he wants to keep the siblings around since they can get stronger, unlike his cursed spirits who cannot get stronger other than more cursed energy he funnels into them. Of course, he doesn't send out anything too strong, just a couple grade 1s that are amped up by his cursed energy, thinking that he's not going to need more than that in order to take the finger. But the other difference that does happen is the fact that Megumi and Nobara actually get sent out on their own rather than Yuji going with them. This is mainly because of the fact that Yuji had made a massive gap in distance between them. And Nobara and Megumi both wanted to prove themselves as well as catch up. After all, Yuji had executed 1 special grade cursed spirit and had been able to throttle and embarrass another special grade cursed spirit before that one. There's also finally enough leads to Megumi and Nobara taking their training significantly more seriously, mainly because they want to close the gap between themselves and Yuji, especially Nobara. Now, Megumi doesn't feel that desire as much, mainly because Megumi isn't as into being a Jujutsu sorcerer in comparison, but the both of them are going to get much stronger as a result of this. This also includes Nobara actively asking Gojo to give her tips on how to improve, as well as to actively train her, which Gojo is more than happy to do. This leads into Nobara and Megumi getting separated, with Nobara fighting against the cursed spirits, while Megumi fights against the finger bearer, and both of them are ultimately able to win their battles, with Nobara landing a couple black flashes, as well as Megumi activating his domain expansion for the first time. So to go over how strong that these 2 characters are as a result of this, Megumi is now about as strong as his Shibuya counterpart, which, keep in mind, that's a pretty good amount of growth for Megumi. And Nobara is right beside him in terms of power. Now, of course, Megumi would win in a fight mainly because of versatility as well as domain expansions, but the 2 of them are now on the same level, which puts them both at a grade 1 level. Still not as strong as Yuji yet, but they are on the path to catching up to him. Or at least catching up to the Goodwill version of Yuji, mainly because Yuji is now going to train with Kamo as well. And Yuji is actually not going to get as big of a buff as people might think. This is mainly because of the fact that Kamo was mainly focused on teaching Yuji how to use some blood manipulation techniques and how to make sure that Yuji can be as skilled as possible. Kamo was more so working on Yuji's form as well as his skill rather than his actual raw power. However, while Yuji didn't get that much stronger from this, this did result in some really good benefits. For example, Yuji is now able to use Flowing Red Skill Stack for significantly longer. Furthermore, Yuji has also picked up on Piercing Blood as well as the disc variant of Slicing Exorcism. He doesn't have the thread variant that Choso was using in Shibuya, but he does have access to the Slicing Exorcism. This also leads into a conversation between the 2 of them, where Kamo tells him about the Kamo clan, blood manipulation, and their history, as well as Kamo's ambitions to become the leader of the clan so he can take his mother out of exile. On top of that, he wishes to build a bond between the Zenin clan as well as his own clan, just to make sure that his family can be safe and that they can have good lives. which that was something that Yuji could honestly respect. He didn't really know much about Kamo as a person until now, but he definitely liked who Kamo was. And while Yuji mainly gained in skill, Kamo had gained a lot more in power, now having a significantly stronger partner to train with that wasn't going to beat him half to death like how Todo would. As a result of this, Kamo was actually pretty strong. He is about the same level that Yuji was at in Flowing Red Scale after landing a Black Flash on Hanami, and some of you guys might think that is an insane amount of growth for Kamo, but I want to keep this in mind that during the culling games, Kamo had shown off the ability to actually perform feats on Curse Naoya. Now, while we don't know how Kamo was able to get this strong, it should be remembered that Kamo is now training with a significantly stronger training partner as well, who is going to very heavily help push him, and Kamo is definitely going to be feeling useless and pretty weak, mainly because of the fact that Yuji is just that much better of a blood manipulation user in terms of pure raw power. So if I were to rank the students right now in power, the student ranking would go somewhat like this. Number 1 is Yuji, who is the strongest, then Todo is behind him, then Kamo is behind that, and then Megumi, and then Nobara. However, Yuji is by far and away the most motivated to train for one very core reason that was extremely important, which was the fact that his brothers in between the dreams were able to tell Yuji that Mahito had gotten significantly stronger. They were now even stronger than Hanami was, which meant that they were a massive threat. Now, Yuji didn't have that many people he could actually talk to this about. After all, he didn't want to give away that he was a death painting, but there was one person he at this point felt bonded enough that he could talk to that was near him. Todo wasn't really near him right now, but he would probably have told Todo if he was. However, he decided to tell his current teacher, and the one who had taught him the most. He told Kamo Noritoshi that he was a death painting. And that explained everything to Kamo. The fact that Yuji was so skilled at blood manipulation, that he never ran out of blood, mainly because he had curse energy that he could convert into blood. He always found that a little bit weird, but he just assumed that Yuji was a mutation in the blood manipulation technique. After all, techniques get stronger with time, so that could very well be possible. But no, it was because of Yuji's physiology. However, over these 2 months, Kamo had gotten to know Yuji much better. After all, Yuji was basically a cousin to him, and this just confirmed that he was. Though there was one more terrifying part of this all, which was the fact that it confirmed for him that somehow Kamo Noritoshi had been alive even now. He wasn't sure if he was alive in the modern era, but he was alive 15 years ago for Yuji's birth to create him, and he was more than likely still alive now, which Yuji later on confirmed. Now, for the sake of the rest of the what if, I'm going to call Prime Kamo as in modern Kamo, just Kamo, and I'm going to call Kenjaku by Kenjaku's name, mainly because of the fact that I don't want to get confused for my own sanity. And with that being said, he was really tempted to tell the higher-ups about all of this, but he had no idea who was in Kenjaku's court. They needed to be careful and cautious about this, and they had to be very careful who they told. They weren't even certain if they could tell Gojo about this yet. However, they did eventually decide that Gojo was certainly one of the people they could trust most, mainly because of how against the higher-ups that they were. However, Gojo didn't seem to be too concerned, mainly because he was the strongest. What Gojo seemed to actually be more concerned about was the fact that Mahito was still alive. He also told Yuji that he knew that he was a death painting the entire time. He just wanted to wait for Yuji to actually tell people himself. But more importantly, he told Yuji that he trusted Yuji to take out Mahito, and worst case scenario, he would handle it. And now we head into the Shibuya incident, which is where we're going to leave this part. Find out what happens in the Shibuya incident on the next part of What If Yuji Got Blood Manipulation Early.